So one president surviving an assassination attempt, another's political livelihood in doubt. For more, let's speak to Thomas Gift, director of the Center of U.S. Politics at University College London. Hello to you, Thomas. Thank you for speaking to Paris Direct. It feels like the U.S. presidential race is at something of a crossroads. How critical are the next few days?
I think that they're absolutely critical, and I completely agree with your assessment. For Biden in particular, it's do or die as we see a chorus of voices become louder and louder that he should step aside. Some reports are suggesting credibly that he may do so as early as Sunday of next week. So far, he's been adamant. He's been able to endure all of this criticism. But whenever you have the New York Times editorial board, allies on Capitol Hill saying that you should get out of the race, it becomes much more difficult to stay in.
From your own perspective, do you think he should step aside?
I think that he should step aside if you just look at the polling data. It looks very disappointing. If you look nationally, 6-7 percentage point lead for Trump. In key swing states, it's even worse. 8-9%. There are some states that aren't even traditionally considered swing states that some in the Republican Party think could be in play this year. So there's the polling aspect, just the reality on the ground. And then I also would say that I think it's a reasonable question to ask whether Biden does have the mental acuity and physical vigor to carry out his job, not just for the next 4 months on the campaign trail, but 4 years from now, whenever he's making major decisions for the United States.
Biden says he's not convinced by the argument to step aside, but were he to change his mind, who should the Democrats look to?
Well, it would really create a free-for-all at the Democratic convention in August. So anyone could put their hat in the ring, and then delegates would be able to select their candidate. I do think Kamala Harris, who's Biden's current vice president, would be at the very top of the list. It would be difficult for the party to move against her, partly because of reasons of identity politics, but also because she's just perceived as the heir apparent and has been since Biden appointed her as his vice president back in 2020. There are some other names, though, that could potentially come in. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland, and Scott Shapiro, who's the governor of Pennsylvania. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those names we'll hear a lot about if Trump exits.
We know a lot of world leaders were preparing for a second Trump presidency. How have leaders been reacting about Biden's health and his prospects in the race to the White House?
Well, I think that you have seen some reluctance among world leaders to come out and openly express criticism of Biden and say that they have real concerns about his health, simply because to this point, again, he's been adamant that he's staying in. And so if Biden would stay in and would win, I think that they don't want to have to eat their words in a few years. But at the same time, we're seeing leaks from private meetings. Some are saying basically that Biden isn't the same Biden that he was even 6 months ago, much less about 3 years ago. So I do think there's a lot of concern about that, but I think that there's even more concern about the fact that Trump looks poised to win this. I mean, there's still a long way to go, but we know that Trump has really taken a relatively isolationist stance on many policies. Kind of his America First foreign policy was not known for working well with world leaders. So I think there's concern in both directions.
Yeah, and in regards to Trump, when he ran and named Mike Pence as his vice president back in 2016, the idea was that Pence was an established, experienced Republican. Now we have his running mate who has less experience and is a MAGA enthusiast. What do you think we would expect from a second Trump presidency?
No, it's a great question. And you're absolutely right. Not only Mike Pence, but a number of individuals who he appointed to his administration, some were reassured by that at the time. They thought that these would kind of be the adults in the room, so to speak, that could keep Trump in check. But of course, many of them ended up leaving the administration. There was such high turnover. Some of them openly criticized Trump once they left. But I think we have to take Trump at his word, which is that a second term would be essentially a retribution tour. He's promised to stamp out the deep state, go after political opponents. And I think that he would constitute sort of a significant challenge to democracy. I'm not convinced that he represents an existential threat, as some Democrats have said, but certainly he's challenged major democratic institutions, congressional oversight, the free press, and so on. I think sort of a second term where Trump doesn't face the prospect of a reelection could even sort of lead to more unhinged activities.